On a cold day in February 2004, in the industrial city of Novosk, Russia, a little girl named Anastasia was born. After spending her early years in an orphanage, she would find her way to a loving home when Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel completed the adoption paperwork. Anna, as she came to be known, moved thousands of miles away to live with them in the Republic of Ireland, becoming their first child. Geraldine worked as a senior manager in the legal department of the CIE, the State Public Transport Company, while Patrick taught French at the Dublin Institute of Technology before his retirement. Though they had no cultural connections to Russia, they were determined that Anna would maintain her ties to her heritage. They learned about Russian culture and kept her birth name. Each year, Anna celebrated two special occasions: her birthday on February 18th and her adoption day on August 10th. Anna was a spirited child with a vibrant personality. One could always tell when she was around. She was exceptionally athletic, enjoying swimming and dancing. She would often spend hours in front of the mirror, practicing her dance moves and having fun as well as singing. Those who knew her described her as very sensitive and innocent. During her early years, though, she was generally happy. Anna faced several health challenges. She was left nearly deaf in her right ear after a tumor was removed in an operation lasting almost 6 hours. She also experienced problems with her sight. As she entered adolescence, she suffered from a painful condition sometimes seen in young people occurring when bones grow faster than muscles. As primary school came to an end, emotional difficulties began to emerge. On one occasion, her parents were notified that Anna had told a teacher she was feeling suicidal. Anna's resource teacher expressed concern to Geraldine and Patrick about her transition to secondary school, fearing that her innocence might make her vulnerable to being taken advantage of by other students. Her parents met with the senior staff of the secondary school early on to discuss their concerns about Anna potentially becoming a target for bullying. Much of the bullying she experienced focused on her height. By the time she was 13, Anna stood 5 feet 8 inches tall and appeared older than her actual age. Her peers also mocked her for being adopted, telling her she didn't have real parents. Geraldine and Patrick documented some of the messages Anna received and showed them to the school administration. Unfortunately, even after she began attending the school, the situation did not improve. In October, Anna came home deeply distressed after an incident while walking back from supervising a disco for younger children. 4 boys approached her, and one repeatedly asked her for intimate relations before touching her inappropriately. Her parents filed a complaint with Garda O'Connor, and the boy was cautioned for his actions. The challenges continued. After painting a black eye on herself, Anna was suspended from school. Geraldine believed this self-inflicted marking was an expression of Anna's internal pain and turmoil. There were also altercations at school, one of which resulted in another suspension. All Anna wanted was to have friends her own age, but she had very few. As Anna's inner struggles mounted, she began creating fake social media accounts to send bullying messages to herself. Following this discovery, Geraldine requested access to all of Anna's apps so she could monitor them. On Sunday, May 13th, 2018, with exams approaching the following week, Geraldine and Anna had planned to study together. However, with a family gathering scheduled for later that day, they decided to relax instead. They watched films and enjoyed popcorn together. As the gathering was about to begin, Geraldine ordered a pizza, and Anna walked to the Chinese takeaway in Leixlip. That evening, Anna and her cousin went to her bedroom to create a YouTube video. Anna loved YouTube. It was her favorite social media platform. Her videos featured content about clothing makeup and dancing, and she had gathered around 100 subscribers. While most comments were supportive, some were threatening and abusive. One told her to go die, and another claimed they would have her executed. As the gathering concluded around 10:30 p.m., Anna went to bed. The next morning, May 14th, 2018, Geraldine was typically the first one awake. Anna reminded her that she would be leaving school at 2:30 p.m. to attend her weekly counseling session with Kildare Youth Services and would need a note for early dismissal. After writing the note and giving Anna a kiss goodbye, Geraldine left to catch the train for her meeting in Dublin. The plan had been for Anna to eat lunch at school before walking to her counseling appointment, but she decided to return home to eat before her session. After finishing counseling, she came home and went to her room. At 4:02 p.m., Anna called her mother, but as Geraldine was in a meeting, she couldn't answer and sent a text saying she would call back shortly. Geraldine and Anna regularly communicated throughout the day, always making time to talk with each other. Patrick was relaxing in the garden when he heard the doorbell ring at 4:55 p.m. Opening the door, he found a boy that Anna vaguely knew. This boy will be referred to as Boy B throughout this narrative. When Patrick told Anna that Boy B was at the door for her, she was confused. While she knew who he was, they weren't friends. Despite her confusion, Anna went downstairs to speak with him. Patrick observed the pair standing in the hallway, whispering to each other. Thinking this wasn't unusual behavior for teenagers, he didn't intervene. Anna then ran back to her bedroom to retrieve a distinctive black and white hoodie that her mother had bought for her. Patrick reminded her about her exams and the need to study. Anna assured him she wouldn't be gone long, gave him a warm smile, and left. Patrick had forgotten to ask where she was going, and after opening the door, he saw the pair walking toward St. Catherine's Park. They didn't appear to be conversing, and Boy B, who was carrying a small backpack, was walking ahead of her. At 5:10 p.m., Geraldine was on the return train and free to call Anna back. Anna didn't answer, and Geraldine didn't leave a message, assuming she would soon be home and able to see Anna in person. When she arrived home, Patrick was in the garden and informed her that Anna had gone out with Boy B, who had come to the house asking for her. Geraldine became immediately concerned, noting that nobody calls for Anna. Shortly after 5:30 p.m., Geraldine sent her daughter a brief text message. "Home now. Answer me now, or I'm calling the police." Geraldine decided to walk to the park to look for Anna, but found nothing. After dinner, she went out again in her car and drove around the area. Anna enjoyed taking long walks while listening to music, but she still couldn't be located. Upon returning home, Geraldine and Patrick turned to Facebook to try to find information about Boy B. They knew him only vaguely and were not acquainted with his parents or where he lived. Geraldine made several phone calls, but gathered no useful information. Anna had now been missing for hours. Patrick and Geraldine visited a friend, John Cribben, a retired detective who could advise them on their next steps. He suggested they go directly to the Garda. The parents went to Leixlip Garda station, where Geraldine explained that it was highly unusual for Anna not to stay in touch with them. However, the Garda did not see an immediate cause for concern. The investigators' first task was to identify Boy B. They located his address in their computer system and visited his home. Garda Connor Muldoon questioned the boy about the day's events. Boy B stated that he had called for Anna, and they had walked to the park together, but he had left her there at 5:40 p.m. The following day, the search for Anna continued. Her parents, joined by family and friends, searched the local area on foot, speaking with anyone who might have information about their daughter's whereabouts. A family liaison officer was appointed to support Anna's family and assist them through the investigation. Anna's parents provided photos of her, including ones showing her wearing the black and white hoodie. On May 15th, in the late afternoon, a press release was issued requesting public assistance, Garda E seeking the public's help in tracing 14-year-old Anastasia Kriegel, who was last seen at her home in Leixlip County, Kildare, at 5 p.m. on Monday, May 14, 2018. Anastasia is described as 5'8", black shoulder-length hair, sallow skin, and slim build. Sergeant John Dunn was assigned to return to Boy B's house for further questioning. This time, the boy explained that he had called for Anna on behalf of another boy, his friend, who will be referred to as Boy A. Boy B claimed that Anna had a crush on Boy A, though Boy A wasn't interested in her. He stated they had walked to the park where he had left her with Boy A before returning home to do his homework. Sergeant Dunn decided to take Boy B back to the park, where the boy showed the officers where they had entered the park and where he had left Anna. The Garda marked these locations using the GPS on his radio before taking the boy home. As Dunn was walking back, he was approached by a man and his son who had heard about Anna's disappearance. The man suggested checking behind the local sewage treatment plant, as teenagers often gathered there. Dunn later realized this was Boy A's father, and the boy with him was Boy A. The statements from both boys were crucial to investigators. The officers had no reason to believe Anna had been harmed, and as the boys were the last ones to see her, any information they could provide was vital. On Tuesday afternoon, both boys were taken back to the park. They led the way, with Dunn Sergeant Hussey and Boy A's father following behind. Dunn noticed that Boy B was taking them on a different route from the one he had shown them earlier. The boys stopped on the path near the BMX track, and both officers observed them exchange what they would later describe as a meaningful glance or look. The decision was made that formal statements needed to be taken to clarify their exact movements. Both boys were taken to Leixlip Garda Station with their parents. Boy B maintained his story, saying the first indication he had that anything was wrong was when the Gardaí came to his door the previous day, adding, "I have no clue what happened to her." Boy A provided a detailed statement. He explained that Boy B was one of his best friends and had visited his house after school. As Boy A was doing his chores, they arranged to meet in the park later. When Boy B arrived at the park, Anna was with him. Boy A said he knew her from school but not well. He recounted, "At one stage, Anna said to me, 'I have something to ask you. I was wondering if you wanted to go out with me.' I was surprised. It came out of nowhere. I kind of knew she liked me because she had asked me out before." He explained that he wanted to decline gently. I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not interested." She didn't answer. She said nothing. She walked off. She looked annoyed and sad at the same time. By this point, Boy A claimed that Boy B had already left. Boy A had noticeable injuries and was walking with a limp. When questioned about this, he claimed that after walking on alone, he was attacked by two males who grabbed him and pulled him to the ground before kicking him. He said the attack ended when he got to his feet and kicked one of them in the head, causing both to flee. The investigators were skeptical about this account. While Boy A did have injuries consistent with some form of assault, his story seemed implausible, particularly his claim that he had kicked a grown man in the head and caused both attackers to run away. Despite their doubts, Gardaí were assigned to investigate his claim. Boy A was taken to Garda headquarters in Phoenix Park, Dublin, where a photo fit of his alleged attacker was created based on his description. When witnesses who were in the park that day were interviewed, none had seen anyone matching the photo fit. No one on the CCTV footage resembled the description either. By Wednesday, May 16th, the search continued to gain momentum. There were now serious concerns that Anna had come to harm or had been killed. Inspector Mark O'Neill of Leixlip Garda Station was assigned to lead the investigation. All officers coming on duty in stations across Kildare and North Dublin were briefed about the ongoing case. Specialist search teams were brought in, including a sub-aqua unit that searched the River Liffey and other bodies of water. The Garda Crime and Security Branch was tasked with analyzing mobile phone data to trace Anna's movements, and the civil defense provided 60 people to assist with the investigation. On Thursday, May 17th, 2018, a derelict 19th century farmhouse called Glenwood House, located on the townland of Coldblow, west of Lucan, became the focus of the search. Built around 1800, it sat on just over 100 acres of farmland on the edge of St. Catherine's Park. The house had been inhabited until the 1990s before being abandoned. By the summer of 2018, it was effectively in ruins, with parts gutted by fire, and the roof collapsed in several places. It was a popular gathering spot for teenagers looking for a place to smoke and drink. That morning, Sergeant Declan Burchell and his specially trained four-person team were deployed to search areas that included Glenwood House and a portion of St. Catherine's Park. After examining hedgerows and ditches using maps and a methodical grid system, they arrived at Glenwood House. Inside the house was dark, with boarded-up windows allowing only small amounts of light to enter through gaps in the planks. Garda White detected the smell of dried blood, and through the darkness could see what appeared to be a mannequin of some sort. He called out but received no response. Following his training, he stepped into the room to confirm what he had seen before leaving to call for assistance from his colleagues. Upon hearing White shout, "Find!" indicating he had discovered something significant, Burchill ran into the house. As the search team entered the room to verify White's observation, they made a horrifying discovery: a naked body wearing only black socks. They had found the remains of Anna Kriegel. Her face was covered by her hair, as if she had been thrashing it around. Scattered about the room of the abandoned building were pieces of her iPhone and items of her clothing. Near the body was a large stick and a cement block with bloodstains and knotted hair on it. Blood was visible on the walls and the carpet. After securing the crime scene, the search team awaited the arrival of Inspector John Gordon from Lucan Garda Station. A local doctor was called to formally pronounce the death. Within an hour, Anna's family was informed that her body had been found and that they would need to go to the morgue for formal identification. The missing persons case had now become a major murder inquiry. State pathologist Professor Marie Cassidy oversaw the transport of Anna's body via hearse to the state laboratory in Whitehall, North Dublin, for a complete autopsy. The extent of injuries that Anna had sustained was extensive, with 50 different injury sites identified. Listing all the locations took Professor Cassidy 40 minutes. The most serious injuries were to her neck, face, and head, with lacerations and bruises covering her entire body. She had died as a result of blunt force trauma. Based on the pathology and forensic evidence, the Gardaí believed that the stick had been used to beat Anna to the ground shortly after she entered the room. They suspected she had then been struck 4 times with a heavy object such as the cement block found at the scene. Blue building tape was found around her neck with 3 of her fingers inside it, suggesting she had tried to remove it. Professor Cassidy noted evidence of compression to her neck, though it didn't appear to have been caused by the tape. There was also evidence of penetration, or attempted penetration, though Professor Cassidy could not determine what had been used. She was also unable to establish whether Anna had been conscious at the time. After being beaten, investigators believed she was dragged toward the window, where a small amount of light came through. It was likely here that the sexual assault occurred, as her false nails were scattered around the room, indicating she had fought her attacker with all her strength. The investigators also believed she likely knew her assailant. Inspector John Gordon issued a public statement. "We are appealing to anybody who was in St. Catherine's Park from 5 p.m. onwards, or thereabouts, on the Cloney Road on Monday, May 14th, to contact the Garda Incident Room at Lucan Garda Station at 01-666-300, the Garda Confidential Telephone Line at 1800-666-111, or indeed any Garda station to pass on any information. We are particularly interested in people who may have been on the Cloney Road or here, who may have had dashcam footage, or who may have just witnessed Anna in the park, or any information that they have in relation to this." When asked how Anna might have traveled from the park to the disused farmhouse, which was at least a kilometer away, Gordon replied, "At this time, we're following a number of lines of inquiry. We have not established any practical facts. There are a number of routes from here to the house, which is why we're extending out onto the Cloney Road as well." When questioned about how Anna's parents were coping, he responded, "As you can imagine at this time, they are particularly devastated. They are extremely distressed. The news left the community shattered. People began leaving flowers in tribute to Anna, shocked that such a brutal crime could occur in their area. Despite the substantial amount of forensic evidence found at the scene, none of it immediately pointed to a suspect, as all the fingerprints and blood belonged to Anna. However, this changed when scientists at the Forensic Science Ireland laboratory made a breakthrough analysis of Anna's top revealed semen stains. A few days later, scientists reported that Anna's blood had been found on a pair of boots belonging to Boy A. His shoes had been taken as part of the investigation into his alleged attack by 2 men. The blood pattern on the boots led the examining expert to believe that Boy A had either been in close proximity when Anna was attacked or had attacked her himself. The investigators already had reason to suspect Boy A and Boy B due to discrepancies and inconsistencies in their stories, which had raised concerns. Now, they had forensic evidence linking at least one of them to the crime scene. Both boys came from respectable backgrounds with no history of disturbing behavior or difficulties in school, as might be expected of young offenders, especially those who commit serious offenses. Boy A's phone had also been examined as part of the investigation into his alleged assault. What they found further implicated him. A screenshot of a list of YouTube videos was discovered, including titles such as 15 Most Gruesome Torture Methods in History, Horror Films That Will Blow Everything Away, and Until Dawn, Get Jessica's Clothes Off. Until Dawn appeared to reference a popular horror video game. Also found was a widely shared short story about a teenage boy who murders his family, called Jeff the Killer. While this could have been explained as merely a fascination with dark and macabre content, another discovery on the phone did little to alleviate suspicions a search had been made for abandoned places in Lucan. On the evening of May 23rd, the parents of both Boy A and Boy B were informed that warrants had been issued for their sons' arrests and that they would need to bring them to the station the following morning. The officers did not mention that immediately after the arrests, searches of both homes would be conducted. What they found during these searches would be deeply disturbing. By 6:30 p.m. on May 25th, the small and stuffy interview room at Finglas Garda Station in North Dublin had become increasingly uncomfortable for its 5 occupants. Designed for at most 3 people, the room felt claustrophobic. Over the previous 2 days, Boy B had been interviewed collectively for around 10 hours. His mother was present during the questioning and held his hand during the first interview. As the questions to her son continued, she moved her chair progressively further away, becoming increasingly distressed by the nature of the inquiries. Boy B's solicitor, who had been mostly silent during the interviews, began to clash more frequently with the interviewing Gardaí over their questioning of his young client. The pressure was mounting for Garda detectives Donald Daly and Damien Gannon. They had only a few more hours to get the boy to reveal what had happened to Anna 11 days earlier. It was important that they spent time at the beginning of the interview building rapport and creating a non-judgmental atmosphere. Consequently, large portions of the first interview involved Daly asking Boy B about his hobbies and interests. Boy B was allowed to take breaks whenever he wanted, and great care was taken not to push him too far. When he seemed at ease, the next part of the interview model was to let him tell his story in his own words without interruption. Daly then began to gently challenge him and highlight where his account was inconsistent or implausible. The forensic evidence against Boy A was overwhelming. The investigators knew Boy B had played a role in bringing Anna to the abandoned house where she was killed, and that he had been present when she died. But that wasn't sufficient. They needed to prove his involvement more definitively. The process had been exhausting, but their questioning had caused Boy B to revise his account of what happened that day. The day before, during his first interview with the Gardaí, he had repeated his earlier story. He claimed that Boy A had asked him to call at Anna's home and get her to come out, then bring her to Boy A, who was waiting in St. Catherine's Park so they could talk. He maintained that he then left the pair before heading home to do his homework. As part of the investigation, officers had reviewed more than 700 hours of CCTV footage from around the area where Anna had disappeared. Gannon and Daly informed Boy B that the footage did not align with his version of events. His statement that he had taken a particular route home could not be corroborated by the CCTV evidence. Despite this, Boy B adhered to his story and offered various explanations for why the footage didn't match his account. As that day's interview concluded, Boy B spent the night in an office on the 2nd floor of the station. The Children Act prohibits holding children in cells, so the Gardaí provided bedding, and cleared an office for Boy B and his mother to sleep in. The station was closed to all other prisoners to ensure Boy B had no contact with any adults. The following day, as his fourth interview began, Boy B's story started to change. His solicitor stated that Boy B had reflected on his previous statements. "I'm going to retell the story of what actually happened." Boy B said, "What I told you yesterday was a lie." He explained that he and Anna had met with Boy A by the BMX track in the park. Until that point, Boy B had remained remarkably composed. Since they were dealing with a minor, it was important for the gardaí to understand exactly what his comprehension of terms like murder and detention was. His responses were both concise and accurate. When Gannon asked if he knew what arrest meant, Boy B replied, "You're detaining me for something that I did or might have done." His confession that he had lied proved to be a turning point in the investigation. The gardaí could now use this admission to cast doubt on all his previous statements. Whenever he said something that sounded untrue, they could remind him that he had previously lied and been caught. Up until this point, Boy B had shown little emotional distress beyond boredom and occasional frustration. As Gannon and Daly began to show him evidence from the abandoned house where Anna had died, this began to change. Due to his age, Daly was careful in his approach to avoid appearing intimidating. As the fifth interview commenced, however, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Daly's voice began to show signs of frustration, indicating he was growing tired of the Boy B's statements. "You have to start telling the truth here. To yourself to tell the truth. A girl has been brutally murdered." Different aspects of his story, but main knowledge of what had occurred in the abandoned house. Finally, late in the afternoon, halfway through the fifth interview, the breakthrough arrived. Boy B was informed the witness had seen a teenager believed to be him walk. Boy B admitted to entering the field to look, but insisted he hadn't gone any further. "You're making this up as you go along. I have to say, I'm presenting facts and evidence to you. You can't keep doing this." Boy B fell silent. He asked if his mother could leave the room, but this wasn't possible. Guardian present at all times due to his age. When he suggested a break, Daly replied, "I think we're at a crucial point here. That's all we want." Boy B took a deep breath. That Boy A had gone into the abandoned house with Anna. "And that's when I heard the scream, and then I ran. I knew that it was Anna, but since Boy A was there, the scream was like really loud. It got muffled like someone covered her mouth. Then began to cry, as did his mother." With Boy B continued, was being questioned at Clondalkin Garda Station, a company similar to their approach with Boy B. The guard, if he understood the difference between right and wrong. Door open for somebody is right. Tripping somebody up. Chocolate bar is wrong. Gardaí. And Thomas Doyle. He maintained that while he had met Anna in the park, during the time leading up to her death. When shown CCTV footage, he pointed out two people who could have been saying, "That's good news." More footage? The were actually Anna and Boy B. The forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene. After Detective Garda Doyle informed him had been found on his boots, Boy A, "Are you joking me? You can't be serious." Air, so the interview was a glass of water. When questioning resumed, "What I'm saying to you is the only place the blood on your boots was in that room." Boy A replied, "No." The content found on his phone, he claimed the torture appeared while looking for horror films online. Despite the evidence, he made no confessions. His answers were no comment or "I don't know." May 25th, Inspector O'Neill from an official at the Office of the Director of Executions informing him charged with murder. An hour Boy A was transported, accompanied by his parents, in Smithfield, Dublin. Following a search of his house, Boy A continued to mount. In the room, two mobile phones were found containing about 500 images of a predominantly pornographic. Another showed a man choking a woman while a second man watched. When the phone's memories were examined, more disturbing content came to light. Several pornographic videos had been accessed online, including one with Russian teenagers in the title and another referencing a woman named Anastasia. Evidence of searches for inappropriate content and phrases like "dead boy prank" in abandoned haunted school were also discovered. However, during the trial, this evidence would not be presented to the jury. Also, in his bedroom was a backpack containing knee pads, shin guards, gloves, a snood, and a homemade mask, referring to as the murder kit. The gloves The mask was particularly significant. Half of the top of the face, with cut-out eye and sharp teeth cut into the upper jaw, painted red and outside. Anna's blood on the knee pads, the gloves, and the backpack. Analysis of the semen found on it was confirmed that the DNA belonged to. He was subsequently charged with aggravated sexual assault, to the extreme level of violence used. The clothes he had worn that day yielded no forensic evidence. That when he arrived home that day appearing shaken and upset, story about being attacked, believing her son had been assaulted, washed his clothes. The investigators were confident she knew nothing actually occurred. This new evidence would be rearrested for further questioning. And on July 8th, and would be interviewed 3 more times daily, who continued their more information. Boy B stated that Boy A had worn the mask during the attack, that Boy A had made for Halloween the year before. He said that he had gone into the house by himself before picking up a that he had played no role in Anna's murder. He also described a A month before the killing, hey, want to kill somebody? No. Because it's retarded. Oh, come on. Who are you planning on? In your dreams. He maintained that his friend often assumed Boy A wasn't serious. Boy had no idea what his friend was planning to do on May 14th. Why he didn't intervene in the room. Because I was scared. I didn't know what to do because my wasn't in place. I didn't know. He explained that the day after Anna went missing, he lied when questioned because I would it and pretend nothing happened. He said he was ashamed that he had failed to help Anna, afraid of being framed by Boy A. But you could have, the detective said. Why don't you try and save her? I don't. Daly accused Boy B of repeatedly lying to a girl that Boy A wants to kill, and you bring her, and you, in your words, hand over that girl to Boy A. Kill. And then you were deceptive after. You lie to everybody. Lie. You're in a corner, and you try story to suit. Do you see? I didn't know he would murder her. I kept thinking to myself, this isn't happening. Boy A wouldn't do this. It's not like. The detectives had reached a turn. They either needed to charge Boy B or release. As the decision about charging him was referred to prosecutions, Boy B days. Eventually, option to charge him. He was charged with the murder of Anna Kriegel, but gave no reply. 1st, 2018, at Anna Kriegel's funeral was held. Requested that attendees wear color in her memory. As she had been part of LA members wearing silver sequins and red headscarves, the family also requested that any donations be given to the adoption group. A Russian flag placed on her coffin. On August 2nd, after Boy A was granted bail in the High Court. On August 21st, after serving just over 4 weeks, while no longer detained, they remained until their trial began. The age of criminal responsibility in Ireland for cases involving rape or murder. Both and became the youngest people in the history of charged with murder. For adults, would potentially carry a life as the accused were minors. Sentences were not mandatory. Paul McDermott was assigned. Leading the prosecution state was Brendan Grehan, criminal barrister with extensive experience in cases. The trial of Boy A and 2019 in the Central Criminal Court. The judge and did not wear wigs and gowns. Boy B were permitted to sit with their parents. In accordance with the Children Act, the judge was not allowed to attend the trial to protect the boy. Only verified journalists could attend. Numbers minimal, and the court would intervene Mr. Justice McDermott denied Boy A's lawyers to have him tried separately. He argued that the jury would inevitably be prejudiced after hearing Boy B's repeated accusations. Although one boy couldn't be used as evidence against the other, jurors would be influenced by these interviews. Quest, Mr. Justice McDermott. It would be a distortion of the entire factual matrix of what the death of Miss Kriegel if it was not set out in. He added that he would give jurors strong warnings in interviews when considering the case against Boy A. Boy B, his defense was more straightforward. Him to the murder, and most of the evidence the prosecution he had provided during his interviews was to minimize the damage these interviews had caused to his, particularly given the numerous lies he had told and the inconsistent account. In early 2009, requested that he be examined by a mental health professional. Humphreys, an experienced psychologist specializing in child, he determined that Boy B had been attack on Anna and subsequently post-traumatic stress disorder. The doctor explained that D contributed to the lies he had told investigators to protect himself. Dr. Humphreys explained that Boy B was unaware of what was going to happen, that he was sexually naive and had Boy A and Anna kiss. Although the defense team, as a witness, this strategy carried risks. With the doctor, Boy about what he had seen in the abandoned house that he had. He told the doctor that he had seen Boy standing over Anna with his trousers open during the attack. Anna gasping before going silent. To give evidence for the defense, he would be subject to cross-examination, which would strengthen the prosecution's argument that Boy B had continued. Throughout the entire trial, Geraldine courtroom. They listened to everyone, determined to see the process through to its conclusion. Professor Marie Cassidy spent 40 minutes listing all on Anna's body and describing the autopsy process. And Boy B were excused due to the graphic nature of the evidence. When Anna's parents were called to give their witness statement, that everyone in the courtroom understood who Anna truly was. They spoke about her hobbies and interests. Would not see a photograph of Anna alive. Descriptions created a clear and detailed picture of the kind. Prosecutor Green also emphasized how severely Anna had been bullied, using this to illustrate she could have been taken advantage of. The computer-generated 3D model of Glenwood House with of items including Anna's clothes and the murder photographs. This helped the jury visualize the scene without needing to visit the location. The violent imagery and pornography found on Boy A's phone during the search were deemed inadmissible because of the 6-month gap between when the material was accessed and the murder and arrest. Judge McDermott ruled that admitting any of the pornographic material would be unfair. He made the same determination regarding internet searches made by Boy B for knives and for a YouTube video titled My girlfriend tortured, stabbed, and starved me. During the trial, portions of Boy B's interview were played for the court. In it, he called Anna an outcast and said she wore slutty clothes. He stated, "I thought of Anna like a weirdo, someone I should not be around." These comments visibly upset her parents. Another aspect of the trial that caused them significant distress was hearing Boy B's description of how Boy A had attacked her. Nevertheless, her parents remained in court displaying remarkable courage and dignity. The boys were seated in different parts of the courtroom and were never observed interacting with each other. On day 15 of the trial, as the court was shown footage of Boy B's interview with the police, where he admitted to lying, a note was passed to the lawyers, stating that Boy B had become overwhelmed with anxiety and was experiencing a panic attack. The court adjourned for the day, and an ambulance was called. He received treatment on site and was examined by a general practitioner that evening. He recovered, and no explanation for the panic attack was provided. Boy B's father testified that his son was very naive and immature and very hungry for friendship. He explained that his son tended to believe everything his friends told him. Despite some evidence being ruled inadmissible, the state had built a strong case against Boy A. It consisted of three main elements: the CCTV footage from the park, the lies he had told, including fabricating an attack, and the forensic evidence linking him to the scene. For Boy B, the prosecution relied on the numerous lies he had told during his interviews and how frequently he had changed his story, though there was still no forensic evidence. The state needed to prove that he knew the plan was to harm Anna that day. To establish this, they referred to his admission that Boy A had asked him a month earlier if he wanted to kill her. If Boy B believed Boy A was serious, then he was guilty. If he thought Boy A was joking, he was innocent. The jury was repeatedly instructed that merely being present at a murder scene is not a crime, nor is failing to intervene to stop a murder. On Wednesday, June 12th, after 7 weeks of evidence presentation, the jury retired to deliberate. They would spend the next 14 hours and 24 minutes in discussion over the following 5 days. At 2:02 p.m., on June 18, 2019, the jury announced they had reached their verdict. Boy A was found guilty of the murder and aggravated sexual assault of Anastasia Kriegel. Boy B was found guilty of the murder of Anastasia Kriegel. The four women confirmed that the verdicts were unanimous. Seated at the back of the courtroom, Boy B turned to his mother and asked, "And guilty?" His mother embraced him while his father became visibly upset. Geraldine and Patrick remained silent as the verdict was read again, continuing to demonstrate the remarkable dignity they had maintained throughout the trial. Following the verdict, Mr. Justice Paul McDermott thanked the jury members for their service and relieved them of jury duty for the rest of their lives. This has been a very difficult trial. I can't offer you anything apart from, of course, sincere gratitude. In a statement after the trial, Patrick Kriegel said, "Anna was our strength, and Anna was a dream come true for us, and she always will be. She'll stay in our hearts, forever loved and forever cherished. We love you, Anna." After their conviction, the prosecuting counsel noted that places were available at the Oberstown Children's Detention Campus. The judge remanded the boys in custody, and sentencing was adjourned until July 15th to allow for psychological assessments of the two teenagers. Sentencing was later postponed again until October. In the days following the verdict, the Kriegel family held a memorial service for Anna in St. Catherine's Park, where those who knew and loved her gathered to remember her and honor her too brief life. Patrick said, "Let's remember that and come back and spend a few moments with her from time to time." And thank you all for coming to join us today and for the wonderful support that all of you have given. Throughout and after the trial, many people expressed outrage that Anna's life had been thoroughly examined and dissected, while the boys convicted of her murder maintained complete anonymity. Denise Fergus, the mother of James Bulger, who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by two teenage boys in 1993, voiced concerns about the decision not to name the killers. In her son's case, the unprecedented decision was made to identify John Venables and Robert Thompson. It remains a criminal offense to identify either Boy A or Boy B, and they will continue to be known only by these designations. On November 5th, 2019, the boys were sentenced. Boy A received a life sentence with a review after 12 years of incarceration. He was also given 12 years for aggravated sexual assault to run concurrently with his murder sentence and was placed on the sex offenders register. Boy B was sentenced to 15 years for murder with a review after 8 years. In delivering the sentence, Mr. Justice McDermott explained, "It was an onus on the court today to have regard to the boys' rehabilitation, but it also had to consider the evidence in this trial." He told the accused, as he sentenced them, that they were responsible for Anna's murder and had to face the consequences of their crime. Boy A would be eligible for release at age 26 and Boy B at age 23. When passing his sentence, Mr. Justice Paul McDermott stated, "Both of you bear responsibility for her murder and must be accountable and accept the consequences of your crimes." He added that this murder was the most serious, disturbing, and shocking type because of the extreme violence that had been used. The judge addressed the boys directly. "Both of you will be required to serve lengthy periods of detention, but you will have the opportunity to return to your families, your community return to society when you are relatively young men. When that will be is not yet determined, but much depends on your behavior and attitude over the coming years. You have the opportunity for a future, a second chance, something you so wrongfully and cruelly denied to Anna Kriegel." Geraldine delivered a victim impact statement during the sentencing. She was wild and wonderful, electric, so full of fun, madness, and laughter. We could not believe the happiness and joy we had found in our lives. She was the love of our lives, and every single night before she went to bed, she told us she loved us too. She cannot do that anymore, and we cannot tell you how badly it hurts. She was just a little girl with so many hopes and dreams and so much love inside her that she shared generously with all who knew her. Her dream was to build a hotel called the Anna Love Hotel. She drew detailed floor plans, and we, her parents, would have had a special cottage on the land where we could spend our holidays and be near her. Her plans, our future shattered. In her victim impact statement, Geraldine noted that Anna was due to meet her two younger sisters for the first time that year, but never had the chance. She added that when Anna's birth family learned what had happened to her, they cried and cried. She said, "They will never feel her warm hugs and loving kisses, or see her dance so elegantly, or hear her infectious laughter, and we will never experience that joy again. We would like to express our extreme gratitude to Mark O'Neill and his team and Garda Siobhan McIntyre, our liaison officer, for holding the family up through all of this pain. Brendan and the legal team, the jury, and the judge, the media, for being so understanding. the Victim Support Unit, our family, our friends, and our neighbors. And thank you to all of the wonderful people out there that supported us and kept us going. Please remember Anna and keep her in your hearts somewhere. The boys are currently being held in Oberstown Detention Center in North Dublin. When they turn 18, they will be transferred to an adult prison to continue their sentences. In May 2020, it was reported that Boy A, aged 15 at the time, was assaulted by fellow inmates and suffered minor injuries. As a result of this incident, Boy A and Boy B will be offered new identities if they are released. During the sentencing, it emerged that in his psychiatric evaluations, Boy A admitted to causing Anna's death but denied the sexual assault. Boy B continues to maintain his innocence and rejects the jury's verdict. Following her murder, the Kriegel family was determined to transform this tragic experience into something positive and established a charity in Anna's honor. ANAIT was created in conjunction with the Russian-Irish Adoption Group to support other teenagers. While we may never fully understand the motivations behind her murder, we know with certainty that Anna was deeply loved and someone who loved deeply in return. Despite all she had endured, she displayed remarkable resilience. These words were written by Anna at the beginning of secondary school when asked about her hopes for the future. My hopes for the future, I hoped I would get into secondary school, and I did. That is one goal down. My second hope is to go to Paris University, like my dad, the hardest one to get into. And when I come home from Paris, I would like to get a dog. I would like to get married too. Not sure I want any babies. Well, not yet anyway. I hope that I have a good life. On the 1st of August 2010, a call was made to emergency services from Mount Druitt in Western Sydney. The morning air was still the neighborhood quiet when a mother's voice came through the line explaining that her daughter was missing. The voice belonged to Christy Abrahams, and she was reporting that her 6-year-old daughter Keisha had vanished during the night. My daughter's not here. Just get the police on their way out there, Christy told the operator. The emergency operator calmly asked several questions, trying to gather information to assist with finding the little girl. Have you checked all the units? What's your name? Christy Abraham, she replied. What's your daughter's name? Keisha. As far as you know, she would be in her pajamas. What time would you have last seen her last night? Do you have any other family that live in the unit block? Any neighbors that she would talk to? No. Christy responded. The operator assured her that help was on the way. We've got police. We've got everybody on their way out to see you. Christy mentioned that her partner Robert Smith was out searching the streets for Keisha. She confirmed that her other child, a 3-week-old baby, was still in the unit with her. When asked if she had thoroughly checked the property, Christy insisted that she had looked everywhere in all the cupboards. The police arrived at the scene and began their investigation immediately. The first few hours after a child is reported missing are considered critical, and officers work diligently to speak with as many people as possible, attempting to establish a timeline of Keisha's last known movements. Christy was no longer with Keisha's biological father, Chris Weipert, so officers went to interview him as well. At approximately 10:45 that morning, they spoke with Chris, who stated that he had been at home with his mother before going out to get a tattoo. Christy's friend and neighbor, Allison Anderson, was eager to help with the search for Keisha. She asked Christy if she had any suspicions about who might have taken the child. Allison would later recall that Christy mentioned Chris Weipert saying, "The effing so-and-so. He'd rode past the unit a week or so ago and did a gun sign with his fingers to Rob, who was hanging up the washing." Allison encouraged Christy to share this information with the police, but Christy declined to do so. According to Christy, Robert had been out searching for Keisha since they discovered she was missing, hoping to find her if she had simply wandered away from the unit. A substantial search operation was initiated by police and community volunteers. They examined bushland parks and reserves throughout the area, hoping to find some trace of the missing child. The investigation gained momentum, and Strike Force Garrison was established to coordinate the efforts. As the investigation progressed, police made a concerning discovery: Keisha hadn't attended school or been seen by anyone outside the immediate family since early July. Detective Inspector Russell Oxford, who was leading the investigation, noted, "The last time she had been seen by immediate family was around the 7th of that month. With Keisha being reported missing on the 1st of August, those 3 weeks between sightings became a vital period for investigators to examine." 2 days after the initial emergency call, Christy and Robert made public appeals for information about Keisha's whereabouts. They appeared before cameras asking for help. Anyone, someone, must know something. "Please, come forward," Christy pleaded. When asked how difficult the 48 hours had been, she responded, "Try to put yourself in my shoes." Robert added, "Just hope that she's found as soon as possible." They described Keisha as a happy, bubbly child who loved to play just like any kid would. When asked if they had any idea who might have taken Keisha, they insisted they did not. "If I had any idea, we'd be there looking," Christy stated. The reporter reminded them that the police had expressed hope, and everyone remained hopeful. Robert responded, "Definitely. We just miss her. And if she can hear or see it, get to a phone or ring the police. We want her to come back safely. Do anything in your power to please come back home," Christy added. The community rallied around the family, holding candlelit vigils for Keisha. Flowers and toys were placed at locations associated with the missing child as neighbors and strangers alike hoped for her safe return. As August progressed, the investigation continued. On the 30th of August, it was reported that Keisha's father, Chris, was being questioned by police. Chris maintained that although he had been paying child support, he hadn't seen Keisha in years and had not maintained regular contact with her since separating from Christy. He firmly denied any involvement in her disappearance. Police indicated they had received information suggesting Chris had been seen near the Woodstock Avenue block on the morning Keisha went missing. However, Chris had been in the hospital for the previous 3 weeks due to complications from diabetes, which had necessitated major foot surgery. Chris's mother, Liz, expressed frustration about the situation. "I'm furious," she said, adding that her son had not been kept informed about developments in Keisha's case. "It has been 28 days. We have no idea what is going on. The police tell us nothing. Then they show up here saying this." Meanwhile, investigators began to notice something unusual about Christy and Robert's behavior. What had initially appeared to be the reactions of desperate parents awaiting news about their missing child started to raise questions. Neither Christy nor Robert had participated in the searches for Keisha, and despite her daughter being missing, Christy's life seemed to continue as normal. She would go to get her hair and nails done and go shopping. Her appearances in the media only intensified suspicions, just makes you sick in the stomach, Christy had said during one interview before commenting that she was tired. Despite growing public doubts, the couple maintained their innocence. Their friend and neighbor, Allison Anderson, became their spokesperson, defending them against the rumors that had begun to circulate. Allison issued a statement on their behalf. The family wishes to deny the recent allegations in the media. The family encourages the public to come forward with any information that may assist police to find Keisha. But please, stop making baseless allegations. The family wishes to be left alone to deal with the situation. Allison added her own comments, saying, "You put yourself in their shoes you couldn't imagine, and that's why this is the time when they need their friends and support and family." In the months that followed, additional controversy arose surrounding Keisha's case. A flea market using Keisha's name had been established at the Hebersham shops, operating every Saturday for about 2 months. Christy publicly accused the organizers of exploiting her daughter's name without permission. "I think he's twisted and he's sick in the head for using my daughter's name," she stated. The organizer, Albert Lafayette, defended the market, criticizing Christy and Robert for not doing enough to find their daughter. "Get off your ass and go look for your kid, because we are trying our best to try and find closure, and our community won't heal until we find some results on Keisha." Lafayette explained that stallholders paid a small fee to sell toys and secondhand items, and they had raised $300 thus far. This money, he said, would pay for a Christmas Day fete with a jumping castle. Christy, however, wanted the market shut down, expressing concern that a proper bank account and trust fund had not been established. "I think it's a scam," she said. "Because it's a high-profile case, it should be shut down until there is a trust fund in place." Despite Christie's objections, the organizers planned to continue running the Keisha flea market every Saturday until Christmas. He's saying that this is all for a reason, and it's all for awareness, and Keisha, and it's for the kids. But where's the money going? Where's the proof? Christie questioned. As the investigation proceeded, Christy and Robert moved into a local motel. Allison agreed to help them relocate to a new property in Kings Langley. Upon entering their unit, Allison noticed one of Keisha's jumpers lying on the floor. Christy commented that the police had assured her nothing belonging to Keisha would be there, then kicked the jumper away while cursing. When Allison entered Keisha's room, she found it completely empty. No possessions, no toys, nothing. A forensics team examined the unit where Christy, Robert, and Keisha had lived. Their investigation revealed something disturbing. Blood belonging to Keisha was found in every room of the unit. Christy was subsequently brought in for an interview regarding these findings. Would there be any reason why there'd be more blood, not just in her unit, but throughout the unit? The interviewer asked. "What are you trying to say?" Christy responded defensively. "I'm just saying that when we forensically examine the unit, there's a amount of Keisha's blood throughout the unit," the interviewer explained. "And I'm just trying to ask you how that would have got there." "I don't know," Christy replied. The interviewer continued to ask about Robert's movements on the morning Keisha was reported missing, noting that he had gone to Westfield Shopping Center in Mount Druitt. "That's a long way from where you are. That's all. We're just trying to get to the bottom of what's happened." Christy became increasingly agitated. "Because, mate, I need to know, and everybody needs to know. So what are you trying to say? That we did something to her?" Throughout the following weeks and months, the community maintained hope that Keisha would be found alive. However, this hope would soon be extinguished by a startling development. On April 22, 2011, authorities made a significant announcement. 2 individuals had been taken into custody on suspicion of Keisha's murder. Those arrested were Christy Abrahams and Robert Smith. Their apprehension was the culmination of months of a complex undercover operation. An officer had been working to gain Christy's trust, hoping she would reveal what had happened to Keisha. The undercover officer met with Christy at a motel, and to earn her confidence, told her that he needed to know the truth and could help her move the body. It was then that Christy finally confessed to what had happened to her daughter. "There's a bit of timber, and she watches hit her head on that," Christy told the officer. "And that's when you say that you did what you took her in the shower?" the officer asked. "Then yes, we're trying to wake her up. We've got the cold water trying to wake her up," Christy confirmed. When asked about the suitcase, Christy stated, "It was Keisha." According to Christy's account, Keisha had refused to put on her pajamas, and in response, Christy had given her what she described as a nudge with her foot. This caused Keisha to fall and hit her head against the bed. Christy described Keisha's body as being like jelly after the impact, though she claimed Keisha did respond when asked to squeeze Christy's finger. "And then she went funny, and then I put her in the shower to try and wake her up. She just started making weird noises. We thought it would go away. We really did," Christy explained. She added that when she checked on Keisha the following morning, the child wasn't breathing. But Christy didn't seek medical help. Describing how they had disposed of Keisha's body, Christy said, "He put petrol on her and branches on her." Smith and Abrahams then took the undercover officer to the location where they had disposed of Keisha's remains. It was here that the search for Keisha came to its heartbreaking conclusion. Her body was found in bushland near Chalvet, in Sydney's west, at 1:12 a.m. Abrahams and Smith were arrested in a lane near their home and subsequently charged. The discovery of Keisha's remains occurred on what would have been her 7th birthday. The community, which had been holding vigils and searching for Keisha for 9 months, gathered to express their grief and anger. The skeletal remains found scattered around a reserve, popular with trail bike riders, would undergo an autopsy to confirm their identity. Smith's father expressed his confusion and disbelief, saying, "You've got to believe that your own son couldn't have a part in this. It's what I want to believe." Jim, who had been like a step-grandfather to Keisha and had often played with her, said simply, "I miss her so much." Detective Inspector Russell Oxford reflected on the investigation. "It's been very arduous and very long, and something that I'm proud of the efforts of the police that worked on this case, and we had tremendous community support all along the way. And I think it was simply the case that we never wanted to give up on this matter." When the couple appeared at Parramatta local court, they chose not to participate via video link. Their lawyer informed the court that they were too distraught to appear. The community's emotional response was profound. One individual expressed their feelings, "I'm hurting, I'm angry, I just want to cry. But it's Keisha's birthday." For the officers who had been monitoring the couple for months, it was a deeply disappointing conclusion to a tragic case. A candlelit vigil that had been planned for Keisha's birthday was attended by hundreds of people, many expressing their anger and disgust at how events had unfolded. One card at the vigil read, "Happy birthday, Keisha. you deserved a better life here in your time on Earth. At 2 o'clock on Good Friday, police informed Keisha's grandmother, Liz, that Abrahams and Smith had been arrested. This devastating news sent shockwaves through Keisha's family and the local community. The little girl they had helped search for, prayed for, and kept in their hearts was gone. A community gives up hope for little Keisha. It just breaks my heart. They've been praying for her for so long. One observer commented. The community directed its anger toward Keisha's mother and stepfather. Family and friends who had once supported the couple felt betrayed and marched on Mount Druitt Police Station. What's in my heart is happiness for Keisha, sadness, and a lot of mixed emotions. One community member expressed. A more subdued group gathered at the shrine outside the unit where Keisha had reportedly gone missing. The substantial show of support for her continued as people placed toys and balloons and lit candles at the site. The shrine had been maintained since the little girl's disappearance, indicating that the community had never abandoned hope. She's loved in so many different ways by people that she never ever knew, someone remarked. When Christy Abrahams and Robert Smith were taken to court, they were met with public outrage over the charges of murdering their 6-year-old daughter. In September 2011, Keisha's private funeral was held. Before the service, her father Chris stated, "I want Keisha to leave this earth knowing how much she was loved, and I want her put to rest the way she deserves." The family requested that mourners wear Keisha's favorite color, purple. Both Abrahams and Smith had requested permission to attend the funeral, but Chris strongly opposed this. "Hell would freeze over before I would let that happen," he said, adding, "My family are the ones left to deal with all of this and arrange the best send-off for Keisha that she deserves. And I'm telling you, they are not coming." Their requests to attend were denied. On September 28, 2011, a public memorial was held for Keisha. A choir composed of Keisha's cousins and friends sang during the service. One speaker at the memorial said, "It wouldn't be fair to say you're in a better place now because you deserve to be here, enjoying your childhood, going into a woman, and experiencing life. I pray that none of us would have to endure the suffering and pain that we had to go through." Another added, "We never get over something like this. Somehow, together, we learn to cope." Keisha's grandmother attended the church service, but did not speak, relying instead on family and friends to express gratitude to the public and police. She can be never stolen from our memories. She's been stolen from us from Earth, but not from our memories or our hearts, one family member said. Father Edward Dooley, who officiated at the service, noted that mourning for Keisha had been extensive, and it was time for healing both within the family and the broader community. Following these memorials, attention turned to understanding how this tragedy had occurred. Christy's early life had been marked by domestic violence. She had both witnessed and experienced violence at the hands of her father. Her mother had suffered from epilepsy, and when Christy was 10 years old, she heard her mother having a seizure. Alone with her 3-year-old brother, Christy went to help her mother, who tragically died from the seizure. Christy's father declined to take custody of his children, so she and her younger brother were placed in foster care, moving between various group homes. As a young teenager, Christy was evaluated by a psychologist who determined that due to an intellectual disability, she needed to be with an appropriate family who could provide proper emotional support. By the age of 16, she was living in a girls' refuge. At 19, Christy met Chris Weipert through his brother Matthew, and they quickly developed a romantic relationship. Soon after Christy became pregnant. Early in her pregnancy, Chris discovered Christy punching her stomach following an argument between them. The situation appeared to improve for a time, and the pregnancy continued. On February 6, 2003, Christy gave birth to their son, Aiden. Community services officers visited their home and found nothing particularly concerning about Aiden's care apart from Christy using 1 scoop of formula instead of 2. After another disagreement between the couple, police were called. Chris told them, "I'm Aiden's dad. His mom's not coping, and she mixes her medication. She threw my clothes and stereo off the balcony last night and threw a lit candle at me while she had Aiden in her arms. The wax went everywhere and nearly burnt him. She's up all night with Aiden and has threatened to throw him off the balcony if he doesn't shut up and let her sleep. I don't know what to do." Christy refused to open the door to the responding officer, but after discussing the situation with a community services worker, the officer believed that Aiden would be removed that night. However, this did not happen. Just 6 weeks later, on March 22, 2003, Chris's mother, Liz, saw her son arriving at her house on his bicycle with distressing news. He told her, "Aiden's blue, and he's dead, and he's cold. Christy's up there screaming and screaming." Liz immediately went to the unit and found Christy holding Aiden, crying that he was cold and asking for another blanket. Aiden was taken to the hospital, but nothing could be done to save him. The post-mortem examination found no signs of abuse, and his cause of death was classified as unascertained. Just over a year later, in April 2004, Christy gave birth to their second child, a daughter named Keisha. The couple's arguments continued, and eventually Christy told Chris that their relationship was over and he needed to leave permanently. As he packed his belongings, they continued to argue. Keisha, who was 15 months old at the time, crawled toward them. According to Chris, Christy moved toward Keisha, picked her up by the neck, carried her to the living room, and dropped her on the sofa. When Keisha tried to crawl away again, Christy picked her up and bit her on the shoulder, causing Keisha to cry out in pain. Chris immediately called the police. Keisha was taken to the hospital, and Christy was subsequently convicted and given a 12-month good behavior bond. Chris initially received custody of Keisha, but the Department of Community Services, now the Department of Family and Community Services, placed Keisha in foster care. On October 15, 2006, Christy was arrested for outstanding warrants related to driving without a license. 2 months later, after completing anger management counseling, Keisha was returned to her mother's care. A year later, Christy was pregnant with her second daughter. During a hospital visit, a nurse noticed a bruise on Keisha's face and reported it. A caseworker spoke with Keisha the following day, and when asked about the injury, Keisha could not explain how it had happened. There was also a cigarette burn on her body, and Keisha said, "Mom hit there. Mom did that." However, no further action was taken. Keisha lived in such a state of fear that she would flinch whenever her mother raised her arm, even in conversation. By this time, Christy was in a new relationship with Robert Smith. By June 2010, Christy was pregnant for a 4th time. She called her father and asked him to take Keisha, saying, "I'm sick of her. I will hurt her. I really will hurt her. I will kill her. Liz Chris's mother was unaware that Keisha had been returned to Christie's care until police arrived at her house after Keisha was reported missing, asking to search the property. Throughout Keisha's life, numerous reports had been made by family members and neighbors regarding injuries observed on the child. Education officials had also made several visits to the home, as Keisha had attended school only 4 times in her entire life. On the occasions when she did attend, teachers reported seeing bruises on her head and face. Between January and July 2010, truancy officers made 7 visits to the home but received no response each time. They subsequently informed Christie that they would be taking legal action regarding Keisha's school attendance. Allison Anderson reported that the last time she had seen Keisha was on July 11th, around 4:30 in the afternoon. Keisha was in a car, and Christie was standing outside smoking. According to Allison, Keisha asked if she could get out of the car, and Christie responded, "No, you effing can't. Shut up and sit in the car." This was the last time Allison saw or heard Keisha. As the initial investigation began, the behavior of Abrahams and Smith attracted attention. Reflecting on their press appeals, Liz Chris's mother observed, "A lot of flashbacks come into your head. I'd seen it before with Aiden. That's why I knew something was going on. It wasn't tears when Keisha was missing. I'd seen it before." No inquest had been held into Aiden's death, but after Keisha was killed, a senior official acknowledged that there probably should have been one. Following the arrests of Abrahams and Smith, Detective Inspector Russell Oxford indicated they would consider reopening the investigation into Aiden's death. After Keisha's death, Abrahams and Smith attempted to eliminate evidence that might connect them to the crime. They removed items from their property and discarded shoes, clothes, and the SIM cards from their phones. To maintain the appearance that Keisha was loved and cared for, and that they hoped for her return, they purchased children's toys and a Tinkerbell poster for when she came home. Forensic pathologist Dr. Matthew Ord examined Keisha's remains and found fractures to her teeth and 10 different injuries to her body and head. Her jawbone had been broken in 2 places. Dr. Ord stated that these types of injuries are typically found in children who have experienced severe prolonged physical abuse, adding that they would have caused Keisha considerable pain. Following her death, Keisha's mother and stepfather kept her body in a suitcase for several days. They subsequently burned her body and buried it in a shallow grave. They disposed of the hammer used to dig the grave and also burned the suitcase in which her body had been kept. Afterward, they took a taxi home. In late November 2012, additional tragedy struck when Chris Keisha's father passed away suddenly. He had been suffering from various health issues, including diabetes, and had also been struggling with substance abuse. He went to bed one evening and did not wake up. Before the court proceedings began, Allison Anderson visited Abrahams in prison. She asked her former friend why she had lied throughout the investigation and left people wondering for months about Keisha's whereabouts. The first thing Christie said to Allison was, "Have you seen Rob? What are you doing here?" Allison asked why Christie had used her and lied to her, and why, if she was struggling to cope, she hadn't given Keisha to a family member or to Allison to care for. Allison then confronted Christie, saying, "You rot in jail, you filthy pig kid killer." She removed her outer shirt to reveal a purple shirt with the words, "A voice for Keisha," written on it, which she would later wear throughout the trial. According to Allison, Abrahams's only response was, "You rotten hell," before blowing a kiss at her. The prison guards had to intervene and remove Allison, who was subsequently banned from the prison for life. Allison decided against visiting Robert Smith, believing it would not provide the answers people needed. On July 18, 2013, as the police van arrived at the Sydney Supreme Court, there were angry reactions from the public with people pursuing the van and shouting. The courtroom was filled to capacity. Abrahams turned away from the public gallery, facing only the direction of the judge. On the first day of her trial, Christy Abrahams pleaded guilty to the murder of her daughter after the prosecution had previously rejected her plea of manslaughter. Dental expert Alan Middleton contested Abrahams's account of events, telling the court that the fractures to Keisha's teeth were caused by much more than a little nudge. In his professional opinion, Keisha had been struck 4 to 5 times with force from multiple directions, resulting in fractures comparable to an adult sporting injury. Inside the courtroom, Christy Abrahams stood and said the word "guilty" without displaying emotion. After the judge left the room, there was a profound silence as everyone watched Christy Abrahams being escorted to the cells. Christy Abrahams received a sentence of at least 16 years, with a maximum of 22.5 years in prison for murder and interfering with a corpse. As Justice Ian Harrison delivered the sentence, she showed no reaction. Cries from the public gallery were audible as Justice Harrison stated, "The trust placed between a parent and child is of the highest and utmost importance. Abrahams caused the death of Keisha with the infliction of a violent, lethal force on what was a vulnerable and defenseless child in her care who is entitled to expect and receive her attention." Justice Harrison determined that while Abrahams had not intended to take Keisha's life, she had intended to cause grievous bodily harm. He also noted that he could not be certain beyond a reasonable doubt who was responsible for the other injuries Keisha had sustained prior to her death. He rejected Abrahams's version of events, but acknowledged that the evidence did not adequately explain exactly what had occurred. The judge recognized that Christy Abrahams had experienced abuse as a child and described what happened to Keisha as the inevitable product of entire intergenerational failures, adding, "The death of the deceased is the foreseeable and predictable consequence of preventable cyclic abuse. The offender's failures are mirrored in the failures of others." Justice Harrison found beyond a reasonable doubt that Abrahams had recklessly failed to care for Keisha after she was injured, which constituted a reckless indifference to human life. Robert Smith was tried separately. On May 3, 2013, he was sentenced to a minimum of 12 years for manslaughter and being an accessory to murder. Christy Abrahams will be eligible for parole in 2027. For her former friend Allison Anderson, the sentence was inadequate. She commented, "It's just horrifying knowing she can be out when she's 46. Does having a bad upbringing and abuse give you the right to go and take people's lives? She knew what she was doing. It's just a cop-out. Keisha was killed by a cold-blooded murderer." The impact of Keisha's case was profound. Many people felt betrayed, lied to, and emotionally devastated. They had invested their efforts in hoping to bring Keisha home safely. One person particularly affected was Allison Anderson. Although she had harbored concerns from the beginning of the investigation, she had desperately wanted to believe that her friend was not involved in whatever had happened to Keisha. The realization that she had been deceived throughout was deeply painful and devastating. Allison, who had also experienced foster care and abuse as a child, found the situation especially personal. She later became a qualified youth worker, using her skills to assist vulnerable individuals in need, hoping to prevent other children from experiencing similar fates. Childhood should be a time of innocence, wonder, and joy. But for little Keisha Weipert, it was filled with torment, fear, and pain. She deserved to grow up in a happy, safe environment, free from abuse and able to flourish. Those who loved her remain committed to ensuring she is never forgotten and always loved. Keisha's headstone reads, "You are not just a memory or part of our past. You're part of our family as long as it lasts." The evening air settled quietly over Florida as 19-year-old Mia Marcano prepared for what should have been a routine weekend visit to see her family. Born in Pembroke Pines, to parents Marlon and Emma, Mia had grown up in a close-knit family that remained connected even after her parents' separation. She had a younger brother named Marlon Jr., whom she lovingly called Munchie, and maintained a warm relationship with her stepmother Giselle. Those who knew Mia often described her as ambitious and adventurous. She possessed a natural loyalty and protective nature, especially toward her brother. Friends noted that she had a special energy about her, the kind that drew people in naturally. When the time came to make plans after high school, staying in Florida was non-negotiable for Mia. She truly loved her life there and the vibrant environment it offered. Initially choosing the University of Central Florida, Mia later transferred to Valencia College to pursue an associate degree in arts. Her academic interests pointed toward a future in either sports medicine or physiotherapy fields that aligned with her practical nature and desire to help others. Beyond her studies, Maya maintained a deep appreciation for creative arts, particularly fashion and design. She also regularly participated in local carnivals, finding the Sunshine State's festivals, fairs, and vibrant culture perfectly aligned with her personality and interests. During her studies, Mia resided at the Arden Villas apartment complex, a community primarily populated by fellow students. In a fortunate arrangement, she secured employment at the complex as a leasing agent, a position that complemented her academic schedule without requiring additional travel. The practical nature of this arrangement allowed her to balance work and studies effectively. Living just an hour's flight away from her family, Mia frequently returned home for visits, maintaining consistent communication with her loved ones throughout her time away. On September 24, 2021, Mia was scheduled to take a flight home for the weekend. This trip was much like many others she had taken before, a simple journey to spend time with family. She had prepared her luggage and made arrangements as she normally would. However, when she didn't send her customary message about arriving at the airport or boarding her flight, her family began to worry. Hours passed, well beyond when she should have arrived, yet there was still no word from her. This silence was entirely out of character for someone who maintained such regular contact with her family members. By approximately 9:30 that Friday evening, her family could no longer rationalize her silence. The absence of any response to their calls was deeply concerning and unlike Mia's usual behavior. Worried about her well-being, they contacted the authorities and requested a welfare check at her apartment, hoping for reassurance that she was safe. Deputy Samir Paulino from the Orange County Sheriff's Office arrived at Arden Villas at 10:02 p.m. Initially, nothing about the exterior of the apartment appeared unusual to him, as he surveyed the premises. After waiting for Mia's roommate to arrive to provide access, the deputy attempted to enter Mia's bedroom, but found it locked from inside. Through the window, he observed a small bookcase positioned against the door, an unusual arrangement that raised initial concerns. Eventually managing to enter through the window, Deputy Paulino encountered a troubling scene inside the bedroom. The room was in disarray with red stains visible on the pillows. Bedding was scattered about in a manner suggesting some form of disturbance, and luggage intended for her trip home sat prepared by her desk, indicating she had planned to leave as scheduled. The special locks her father had installed on her windows for additional security had been broken off, a concerning detail that suggested forced entry. Some of her jewelry lay broken on surfaces around the room, with no indication of Mia's whereabouts among the disturbed items. Despite the concerning state of the apartment and these indicators of potential foul play, Deputy Paulino discussed the case with his supervisor, Corporal Dale, but neither officer notified the Criminal Investigations Division, which would have been the appropriate protocol given the circumstances. The deputy also departed to respond to other calls without informing anyone about the potential evidence of a crime he had discovered, treating the situation with less urgency than the scene perhaps warranted. Mia's roommate, visibly upset by the situation, provided a significant piece of information to the authorities during this initial investigation. She revealed that Mia had recently been receiving unwanted attention from a maintenance worker at the complex, a detail that would later prove highly relevant. The man, identified as 27-year-old Armando Caballero, had been employed at the apartment complex since June of that year, just a few months prior to Mia's disappearance. Multiple residents confirmed this account when questioned, describing how Armando appeared fixated on the 19-year-old, continuously finding opportunities to speak with her and invite her out, despite her repeated rejections. These witnesses painted a picture of persistent, unwanted attention that had become increasingly concerning over time. The situation had escalated to the point where Mia began feeling apprehensive about the interactions according to those close to her. In one notable instance that demonstrated the extent of his interest, Armando had sent her $700 via a mobile payment app with a message describing her as pretty. Mia, uncomfortable with this gesture, promptly returned the money, but remained uncertain about how to address the persistent behavior beyond attempting to avoid him when possible around the complex. Other women residing at the complex shared similar experiences with Armando when questioned by investigators, suggesting a pattern of behavior. One woman, who lived at the Sabah Club apartments, later informed investigators that in March 2021, Armando had left her a note requesting a date. Though initially uncertain, she agreed, but when he asked to meet sooner than planned, she declined. Following this rejection, a projectile was thrown at her window during the night. Believing Armando was responsible based on his previous behavior, she reported the incident to the police at that time. Although they investigated the matter, the case was eventually closed without charges being filed, a decision that would later be scrutinized in light of subsequent events. As Mia's family arrived at the apartment around 3:00 a.m. to assist with the search, deeply concerned about her welfare, they directed Deputy Paulino's attention to several items they found troubling. These included a yellow box cutter located under the bed and Mia's childhood teddy bear, which they noted she always took with her on trips, regardless of duration, a detail they felt was significant given that her luggage remained in the apartment while this sentimental item did not accompany her. An hour later, at approximately 4:00 a.m. Armando unexpectedly appeared at Mia's apartment, accompanied by his roommate. Given that he was off duty and had no apparent professional reason to be there at such an hour, his presence was immediately unsettling to Mia's family, who by then had heard enough about him to recognize him immediately and question his motivations for being present. When detectives questioned why he was there, Armando explained that he had received a call from a coworker named Tassiona, who had informed him about Mia's disappearance, which was why he had come to the apartment. This explanation immediately raised suspicions among Mia's family members. Mia's family expressed open skepticism about this explanation during the encounter, particularly because none of Mia's friends or roommates recognized anyone named Tachiona, casting doubt on whether this person existed or had the relationship with Mia that Armando claimed. When confronted with direct questions about his interest in Mia, Armando denied the allegations of inappropriate attention. He stated that he had last seen her around the complex hours before she went missing, but offered no additional information that might assist in locating her. The detectives, present finding insufficient grounds for further questioning or arrest at that time, based on the evidence and statements available, allowed Armando to leave the complex after this brief interaction. This decision would later be questioned as additional information came to light in the case. A subsequent background check conducted by authorities revealed concerning information about Armando's past that had not been initially known. He was identified as a convicted felon with a 2017 conviction for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Further investigation uncovered that in 2013, he had been arrested for using a destructive device resulting in property damage and discharging a weapon on school property after an incident at Warner University. This incident had involved an improvised explosive device that Armando had claimed was intended merely as a prank on dormitory residents, though it had resulted in formal charges at the time. A security guard employed at the complex had taken the initiative to collect fingerprints from Mia's window, using tape, recognizing the potential importance of this evidence. However, Deputy Paulino did not take custody of this evidence. When informed of its existence, indicating to the security guard that it wasn't a high-priority case. The same guard had also noticed a screwdriver and cell phone case in the back seat of Armando's car during his presence at the complex, but without a proper search warrant, they were unable to examine these items more closely or determine their significance. Orange County Sheriff John Min later made a public statement addressing the initial handling of the case, noting that there wasn't sufficient evidence in the video footage or the events of that night to justify an arrest or detention at that early stage. This assessment would later be reconsidered as the investigation progressed and additional evidence emerged. Eventually, a different deputy was notified about Mia's case at the specific request of her aunt, who remained deeply concerned about the situation and the response it had received. This deputy, upon reviewing the circumstances and examining the apartment, found the situation concerning, based on what he observed and heard from family members. Acting on these concerns, he promptly notified a missing persons detective, which led to the formal initiation of a more comprehensive investigation beginning at 8:47 a.m. on September 25th, the day after Mia was reported missing. That morning, investigators received a call from Mia's family directing them to Armando's apartment. Still troubled by his behavior and increasingly convinced of his involvement in her disappearance, family members had begun their own surveillance efforts and had observed him emerging from his residence carrying items that raised their suspicions. These items included a glove, a backpack, and specifically a pink blanket that they immediately recognized as belonging to Mia, further cementing their concerns about his potential involvement. When police arrived at Armando's residence in response to this call, Armando permitted Mia's family to enter his apartment with officers present to look around. However, due to legal constraints, nothing could be touched or moved during this informal examination, as authorities lacked a proper search warrant that would allow them to collect evidence or conduct a thorough search of the premises. This limitation frustrated the family's efforts to find answers, but remained necessary to preserve the integrity of any potential future legal proceedings. At 3:00 p.m. that same day, Armando left his apartment, and just 90 minutes later, police officially confirmed that he was now considered a suspect in Mia's disappearance. This designation reflected the evolving understanding of the situation and the accumulating indicators of his potential involvement in whatever had happened to her. Authorities were actively working to obtain a proper search warrant during this period, which was finally approved just over 24 hours after Mia went missing at 9:35 p.m. on September 25th. That same evening, Armando sent a text message to someone the contents of which were not immediately disclosed, and then unexpectedly, he too disappeared from the area. This sudden departure raised additional questions for investigators about whether Mia might be held somewhere against her will, and whether Armando had gone to move her, attend to her in some way, or possibly attempt to flee from the approaching investigation. By this point, 3 days had passed since anyone had heard from Mia. Her family remained hopeful that she was alive, despite the concerning circumstances, with her father expressing the emotional toll of the situation in a statement to local media. The relationship that we have is it's like we communicate hundreds of times in one day, and to not be able to hear from her or know where she is really, really, really breaking my heart right now. This is unusual for her. Very unusual. This sentiment reflected the family's deep concern and their intimate knowledge of Mia's typical communication patterns. Hundreds of volunteers joined the search effort over the following days, covering extensive areas surrounding the apartment complex and other locations of interest. Despite these widespread efforts and the participation of so many concerned community members, there was still no sign of Mia as days continued to pass. Further investigation of her apartment revealed significant new information that helped establish a timeline of events. Digital records showed that at 2:14 p.m., on the day she disappeared approximately 3 hours before she was last seen, a master key had been used to access her unit. This key was linked to Armando, not Mia, indicating he had entered her apartment earlier that day without authorization. Records showed that he had entered her apartment again at 4:34 p.m., establishing a pattern of unauthorized access. Mia had then used her key to enter her unit at approximately 4:30 p.m. to collect her bag before heading to the airport, a journey she evidently never completed. This electronic record of her entry into the apartment would be the last confirmed indication of her movements that day. This evidence, when assembled, suggested a troubling scenario. Armando had been inside Mia's apartment, possibly waiting for her when she returned home from her daily activities. Security footage captured her walking into her apartment that afternoon, an image that later became particularly distressing to her mother, who said she would mentally urge her daughter not to enter when viewing the footage, wishing something could have diverted her from returning to her apartment at that critical moment. At 5:52 p.m., Armando's vehicle was recorded by security cameras leaving Arden Villas, establishing his departure from the complex after Mia's last known entry. By September 27th, authorities had gathered sufficient evidence to arrest him on suspected burglary charges related to his unauthorized entry into her apartment. Investigators suspected more serious offenses might have occurred, but lacked adequate evidence for additional charges at that time, and intended to question him further once in custody. However, before the arrest could be executed, police received an unexpected call reporting a suicide at a property. Upon arrival, they discovered that Armando Caballero had taken his own life, having been found deceased in a garage where paint was stored at a different location. This development significantly complicated the investigation as it eliminated the possibility of questioning the primary suspect about Mia's whereabouts or obtaining a confession or explanation directly from him. With Armando now deceased, investigators worried they might never locate Mia or determine conclusively what had happened to her in the absence of his testimony. They continued their investigation using data from Armando's phone, which provided some answers about his movements and activities around the time of Mia's disappearance. Analysis of his communications and location data revealed that at 7:01 p.m. on the day Mia disappeared, approximately 2 hours after she was last seen, Armando had logged a maintenance call for her unit in the complex's system, a call later determined to be fabricated and not requested by Mia or her roommates. This false maintenance request appeared to be an attempt to create a pretext for his presence in or near her apartment during that time period. 10 minutes later, at 7:11 p.m., Armando contacted the apartment office staff, requesting access at the complex gates according to records. 5 minutes after that, at 7:16 p.m., Mia's key fob was used at her unit, though surveillance indicated no one entered. While investigators couldn't confirm with absolute certainty that this was Armando using her fob, they knew it wasn't Mia herself, as she had not been seen since earlier that afternoon. Shortly thereafter, at 7:40 p.m., Armando left the complex again in his vehicle, according to security footage. Further analysis of his phone data revealed that on the evening Mia went missing, Armando had visited Timberscawn, a location where he had previously resided before moving elsewhere. According to the location data, he remained there for approximately 20 minutes before departing. The area, as described by local residents, contained numerous abandoned homes and boarded-up buildings, with residents describing it as feeling generally unsafe and partially derelict. Investigators questioned why Armando would need to return to his former residence for such a brief period on that particular evening, finding the timing suspicious. Part of the old apartment complex was now completely derelict, surrounded by extensive wooded areas that could potentially conceal evidence or a person. Having conducted broad searches covering many miles around the original apartment complex, authorities now focused their efforts on this specific location, with the FBI joining the investigation to provide additional resources and expertise. Family and friends continued to hope that Mia might still be alive somewhere, though the outlook appeared increasingly concerning as days passed without contact. Sheriff Min made a public statement during this period outlining the focus of the investigation. "We believe that the suspect that we had named Armando Caballero is responsible. We don't know all the circumstances involved, so at this time, we don't believe there is another person involved. But remember, I said, these investigations constantly shift and change, so we're taking all this information in. And you know, We would never ever rule that out, but he was the main person that we were focusing on. On Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, after a week of intensive searching, investigators made a distressing discovery approximately 18 miles from Arden Villas, in an abandoned section of the Timberscan apartments where their attention had been directed by Armando's phone data. They located a body in overgrown brush amidst discarded items at the partially abandoned housing development, where Armando had once lived, precisely in the area his phone had placed him on the evening of Mia's disappearance. Mia's grandmother later expressed finding a measure of solace in the discovery despite the devastating nature of the news, saying, "I have to say, I thank God for bringing her to me, because I said before I would not know what life would have been if I've never found her." This sentiment reflected the terrible uncertainty that families of missing persons often express, the pain of knowing what happened, however tragic, sometimes providing a form of closure compared to the ongoing anguish of not knowing. The condition in which Mia was found provided clear evidence of foul play. She was discovered with black duct tape binding her hands and feet and covering her mouth, indicating restraint and likely preventing her from calling for help. She was dressed in jeans, a bra, and a robe, suggesting she may have been preparing to change clothes when she was accosted. Her bag was found nearby, containing the shirt she had last been seen wearing and her identification items that connected her to her final known movements. An autopsy was conducted to determine the circumstances of her death. The medical examiner confirmed that her death was classified as a homicide by undetermined means, though decomposition that had occurred during the week between her disappearance and discovery prevented more specific conclusions about the exact mechanism of death. The report specifically noted no identifiable evidence of trauma to her body and no evidence of sexual assault details that provided some small comfort to her grieving family amidst the tragedy. Testing of items recovered from where Armando's body was discovered provided further evidence connecting him to Mia's death. Forensic analysis revealed the presence of Mia's blood and hair on items associated with him. Perhaps most significantly, the same type of black duct tape found around Mia's body was also discovered in his car, creating a direct material link between him and the manner in which he was found. Examination of Armando's body during his autopsy revealed physical indicators consistent with a struggle. Examiners determined that marks on his finger were consistent with bite marks suggesting Mia had attempted to defend herself. Additional marks on his body indicated his recent involvement in a physical confrontation, aligning with the timeline of Mia's disappearance and presumed resistance to her abduction. The rapid sequence of events from Mia's disappearance to the discoveries of both her body and Armando's suicide had come to a tragic conclusion, but many questions remained unanswered due to the circumstances. The specific details of what transpired in Mia's apartment that day would never be fully known, with certainty, and the possibility of complete closure for her family seemed remote without Armando's testimony or explanation. Other residents at the apartment complex expressed horror at the situation when the details became public, particularly as many had previously reported safety concerns about the property. One resident commented on the unsettling reality that maintenance personnel had access to their apartments, noting that key fobs had only been introduced the previous month. People who are living in apartment complexes are going to sleep at night, not knowing that there is someone who has free access to their apartment. The resident observed, capturing the sense of vulnerability many felt after learning what had happened to Mia. On October 15, 2021, Mia was laid to rest in a funeral attended by over 2,000 people, with thousands more viewing the service via live stream, demonstrating the widespread impact her story had on the community. Hundreds of attendees wore blue Mia's favorite color as they gathered to honor her memory and support her family in their time of grief. In the aftermath of the case, significant actions were taken on several fronts to address shortcomings identified during the investigation. 2 deputies involved in the initial response were found to have violated department policies in their handling of the situation. Deputy Samir Paulino was determined not to have followed proper procedure during his apartment investigation and failed to report crucial details to his supervisor, such as the blood found on the pillow and the broken jewelry. Due to these oversights, Maya was initially classified as a voluntary missing person rather than a missing endangered person, which meant the Criminal Investigations Division was not notified immediately, as protocol would have dictated given the concerning circumstances. Rick Raymond, a former police officer who later became a private investigator and commented on the case, suggested that Armando's appearance at the apartment that morning should have raised significant concerns for the responding officers. When you have multiple individuals saying that item belongs to a missing individual, and it is in this individual's vehicle to me, that would have told me immediately, I need to look at this guy. This assessment highlighted potential missed opportunities in the early stages of the investigation that might have led to Armando's earlier detention. Sheriff Min responded to these criticisms by noting, "Remember, that deputy didn't have all the information that we now have a week and a half later. So yes, all that takes time." However, he acknowledged that more could and should have been done in the case, particularly regarding the initial classification and response. The sheriff's office issued a formal statement addressing the matter. In the case of Mia Marcano's disappearance, managers in the responding deputy's chain of command recognized a lack of urgency on his part and asked that his role and the role of his corporal in the first hours of that incident be investigated by a professional standards division. As a result of this incident, we are in the process of making changes to policy that will direct first responding patrol deputies to immediately notify their supervisors and the missing persons unit in any case where someone is considered a missing endangered person. This acknowledgement of procedural failures led to specific consequences for the officers involved. As a result of the internal investigation, Deputy Paulino received a 150-hour unpaid suspension as discipline for his handling of the case, while his supervisor, Corporal Kenneth Dale, received a 10-hour unpaid suspension for violating department policies in his oversight of the response. These disciplinary actions reflected the department's assessment that proper protocols had not been followed in the critical early hours after Mia was reported missing. In March 2022, approximately 6 months after Mia's death, police released their final report on her disappearance and death. The comprehensive document spanned over 100 pages and detailed all the evidence implicating Armando Caballero as the sole suspect in the case, formally concluding the investigative phase of the response to her death. Mia's family, seeking accountability and systemic change to prevent similar tragedies, initiated a wrongful death lawsuit against the Arden Villas apartment complex. They also filed a separate legal action against the Orange County Sheriff's Office, alleging careless handling of the case and failure to treat her room as a crime scene when clear indicators of foul play were present during the initial welfare check. In response to the legal action and public scrutiny, Arden Villas issued a statement addressing safety concerns. To ensure nothing like this happens again at Arden Villas, we are taking numerous proactive steps to enhance our security protocols. We are in the process of reviewing our entire security apparatus and will make changes or upgrades as warranted. The complex noted that Armando had been vetted through a national background check service provider prior to his employment, which had not revealed any records of burglary or sexual assault, though it had apparently missed or disregarded his prior felony conviction for aggravated assault. However, Mia's family expressed dissatisfaction with this response, pointing out that the apartment complex had not even acknowledged her disappearance in the initial days, had not reached out to them to offer condolences or assistance, and had taken several days to issue any statement about someone who had been both a resident and an employee. This perceived callousness added to their grief and sense that the tragedy could have been prevented with better policies and more thorough background checks. The family's attorney, Darrell Washington, stated that they hoped the lawsuit would yield answers to lingering questions and prompt meaningful change in apartment security practices. He also suggested that Mia's family believed others might have assisted Armando, given certain aspects of the case, though no additional suspects were ever charged, and criticized the department's handling of the investigation, particularly in its early stages. Many residents of Arden Villas organized protests regarding the complex's management and security practices in the wake of Mia's death. Open letters were drafted and circulated detailing safety concerns at the complex that predated her disappearance, indicating that residents had felt vulnerable even before the tragedy occurred. These communications highlighted issues such as inadequate security cameras, insufficient security personnel, poor lighting in common areas, and substandard maintenance practices. Areas like the parking lot reportedly lacked any surveillance cameras and were poorly illuminated, creating spaces where residents felt unsafe, especially at night. After extended legal proceedings, the lawsuit against Arden Villas was eventually settled for an undisclosed amount, though the terms of the settlement were not made public. This resolution provided some financial acknowledgement of the family's loss, but could not, of course, restore what had been taken from them. In a more positive development, arising from the tragedy, efforts were made to honor Mia's memory through both symbolic gestures and substantive policy changes. To commemorate what would have been Mia's 20th birthday, her family received a key to the city of Pembroke Pines, her hometown, and her birthday was officially designated as Mia Marcano Day, creating a permanent remembrance of her life and the impact of her story. More significantly, in June 2022, legislation known as Mia's Law, or Senate Bill 898, was signed into law in Florida, creating new requirements designed to prevent similar tragedies. This statute requires property owners to conduct comprehensive background checks on potential employees and specifically prohibits the hiring of individuals with violent criminal histories or those listed as sexual offenders or predators for positions that would give them access to apartment units. Additionally, the law mandates maintaining a detailed log to track each unit's keys and extends the required notice period for maintenance access to residents' units from 12 to 24 hours, giving residents more time to prepare for and be aware of authorized entries to their living spaces. These practical measures directly address the circumstances that had facilitated Armando's access to Mia's apartment and might prevent similar situations in the future. Beyond these legal and policy changes, Mia's family established the Mia Marcano Foundation with a mission to support educate and provide resources to families of missing persons, while advocating for the protection of students and vulnerable individuals living in rental properties. Drawing from their own painful experience, the foundation assists with searches for other missing people and offers support to families experiencing similar circumstances, helping them navigate the complexities of working with law enforcement and media during such crises. They also created the MMF Safe and Secure Accreditation Program, an initiative designed to help ensure apartment complexes and multi-unit dwellings maintain adequate safety measures and provide professional development for staff regarding appropriate interactions with residents. This program offers guidance on best practices for security and encourages property managers to prioritize resident safety in their operations. The simple act of booking a flight home to visit family on September 24, 2021, was entirely ordinary for Mia Marcano, a routine part of maintaining her close family connections while pursuing her education. The rapid and tragic events that followed that ordinary decision continue to affect everyone who knew her, as well as many who learned about her story through media coverage. Many specific questions about the sequence of events remain unanswered, with no one left to provide complete closure about exactly what happened in her final hours. Mia's Aunt Pia reflected that one can never take time for granted, as life truly is brief and unpredictable. Talking about Mia in the past, I always thought I had forever. She said, expressing the common assumption that there will always be more time with loved ones, an assumption that Mia's sudden loss had painfully dispelled for her family. Mia's brother shared that nothing positive that happens to him will ever bring complete happiness, regardless of how wonderful it might be, as he's always reminded that he cannot call his sister to share the news or celebrate with her. This ongoing sense of loss colors even joyful occasions for those who were closest to her, creating a persistent absence in what would otherwise be moments of pure celebration. Emma Mia's mother observed with particular poignancy, "For everyone else, life goes on, but I'm still here trying to figure this puzzle out. Will I ever finish this puzzle? I don't know. I think about her every day, every hour, every minute. She's everywhere. Her presence is everywhere. Every day I look at her pictures, but eventually that's it. There are no more pictures to be made. There are no more memories. Her pictures are going to fade, just like everything else. She'll be forever, our 19-year-old. This sentiment captures the frozen-in-time quality of grief, where the world continues moving forward, while those experiencing profound loss remain partially anchored to the moment of their bereavement, particularly when that loss occurs so unexpectedly and prematurely. The changes made in Mia's name, the foundation, the legislation, the safety programs create a legacy that extends beyond her 19 years, transforming a personal tragedy into meaningful protections for others. While these positive developments cannot restore what was lost, they ensure that her story continues to make a difference in the lives of others who might otherwise face similar dangers, creating a form of meaning from circumstances that seemed at first to hold only senseless loss.